this looking at data counting, you can get insane value by just doing that. And that's the one part that everyone skips. I'm going to use a spreadsheet to drive home the fact that this process can be dead simple and you can get immense value out of it. When you see an average score of 3.2 versus 3.7, no one really knows what the hell that means. It's not really actionable, honestly. They're like, oh, it's like getting better. Honestly, like nobody really knows whether it's getting better or not. So as a product manager, if you ever see the word agreement, you need to pause and be like, let me dig into this, please. If people don't trust your evals, they won't even trust you. You're done.
Okay, welcome everyone. My guest today is Hamel. Hamel has trained over 2,000 PMs and engineers from companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google on how to run AI evaluations. He teaches the most popular course on this topic at Maven. So really excited to dig into his best practices. And I feel like I made a lot of mistakes that, and have a lot of assumptions that Hamel can help dispel. So welcome.
Really happy to be here. Excited to talk about evals.
All right. So, there's been a lot of like online debate about like, are evals valuable or not, like blah, blah, blah on Twitter. And let's just make this really practical. Let's talk about evals for like a real product. Like, do you have a product example that you want to talk about throughout?
I do. Yes. So there's a company that I've been working with. Let me share my screen.
Sure.
So just to set the stage, Nurture Boss is a AI powered property management assistant. And so it's a really interesting use case because it's actually one of the best teaching examples. And I love using it because it's messy and there's enough complexity to where it's realistic. And so the question comes like, oh, okay, like how do you do evals? So like a lot of times when we talk about evals, we can show toy examples, but sometimes those are oversimplified and it's hard for people to generalize that. Like how am I going to do that for my app? My app is complex. I have other things going on. Well, that's what we're going to show today is actually we're going to look at Nurture Boss's data together and we're going to do like a minimal set of evals and we're going to do that very quickly.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So I know on your podcast you had Aman on already. He may have talked about Arise. There's a lot of different solutions out there. The ones that I come across the most in practice are Arise, Brain Trust, Langsmith. Those are like kind of three popular ones. Mm-hmm. One of the observability platforms that Nurture Boss used in the beginning was Brain Trust. They actually like created their own, but I'm going to show you their data in Brain Trust because that's where we have it anonymized.
Traces is basically like the chat conversations, right? With Nurture Boss.
Okay, I'll show you what a trace is. The best way is just to look at it rather than me trying to define it. So I'm just going to open one. So trace is a log of all of the history of a particular interaction that your user might be having with an AI, including all of the internal things that might be going on that the user doesn't see. Okay, so this is an example of a trace. And so what we see here is we have the system message. So you are an AI assistant working as a leasing team member at the Arrow, and you have different instructions on how to interact with the resident or the prospective resident. For example, how to deal with maintenance requests, or what to do with prospective residents and tour scheduling, and all kinds of things like applications.
Yep.
And there's a lot of instructions here. We don't need to read all of them. We can scroll down. And we see here, where is the building located is one of the questions the user is asking. Mm-hmm. And so there's a tool call made, get communities information, we can expand it, and it's pulling back some information. It's making a tool call. The tool call returns with some information, which you can see here. And then the assistant is giving an answer. The arrow is located at this address. And then the user is saying, I'm interested in a 2-bedroom, what's available? And actually, then it stops. It just dead ends. And there is a failure of some kind. It just wasn't surfaced to the user. So this is not like necessarily the most interesting error. This is just like, something that you would see in the real world. Now, this is an example of a trace. So when Jacob came to me, I said, okay, Jacob, this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at traces. And he's like, what do you mean we're going to look at traces? This seems like we're going in the wrong direction. Like, this is going to take forever, Hamel. Like, this must be like, what are you doing? He said, just trust me. We're going to look at about 100 traces. and we're just going to write notes about what is going wrong. The first one may be painful, but we're going to get really good at it. By the time we get to the 10th one, we're going to be really fast. So we got to this one, we're like, oh, like something happened here. The conversation got cut off. It failed. We had to do some investigation to figure out like what happened, but we just wrote a note. And so in this case, we can make an annotation. So I would write a note saying like, hey, there was an error that was not surfaced to the user. Okay, just write a note.
Okay.
And the conversation dead ended. The point is not to do a full root cause analysis, just observe what's wrong. Okay, and that's all you got to do is do this.
Do it like 100 times.
Yeah, do this 100 times. Now, Jacob's like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? Like, I hired you, Hamel, for evals, and you are like a monkey looking at this data, and like, I don't understand what is going on. Like, what is the purpose of this, Hamel? This is a very expensive consulting engagement, and we are looking at data. I said, no, trust me. We are going to, this is going to lead somewhere.
Well, I mean, you're basically human labeling this data, right? You're basically saying like,
I'm basically human labeling this data.
Yeah.
So let's look at a couple of more to like, I think it will become clear why this is valuable really fast. Okay, so this is another trace. You are a leasing team member at the Meadowbrook Gardens, and your name is Taylor, so it's giving it a name. Your goals are to answer questions. Okay, so it's really the same thing. You have, you're fielding calls from residents, actually prospective residents, because this looks like it's like a sales funnel type of mode where you're like encouraging customers to schedule tours. So let's go to the first user message. So we got the system message out of the way. The assistant says this call, so this is over voice now, okay? This call may be recorded, blah, blah, blah. And the only thing the user says is preview program. I have no idea what that is. Maybe it's something in the system prompt, but I personally don't recall necessarily what that is. The assistant says, it looks like you might be interested in learning more about community and possibly scheduling a tour. Would you like to schedule a tour? User says no. The assistant says, seems like you might have a specific question or need assistance with something related to our apartment. How can I assist you? Can I tell to a representative? Obviously, they're trying to talk to a person. Sure, I can connect you to the representative. Would you like me to do that now? Yes. Great. I'll connect you to a representative. One moment. Would you like me to connect you? I'm already frustrated. Like, get the person to a human being already. Like, so many questions. Like, are you sure? Are you sure? Blah, blah. So, okay, like ADU, who wants to talk about ADU? It sounds like you might be interested. Yes. Could you clarify your query? I just want to talk. We've all had this experience at one point or another in our lives.
Yeah, every time, man, I call. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is not, I want to throw my phone out the window whenever I have this interaction with an AI. So, okay, I understand. I'll connect you. And finally, a tool call is made. We're transferring the call. Okay. So we feel the pain of the user. We do, honestly. And it's pretty clear, like, hey, so this is a clear error. In this case, I'll write the note here just like I did to the other one.
And you're not trying to like write solutions, you're just trying to write like the note of the problem.
Yeah, I'm not trying to debug it. I'm not trying to say like why it happened. I'm not trying to root cause a solution. I'm just journaling why it happens. So you do this. It took us like an hour to do 100 traces. It didn't take us long at all.
Okay.
But by the end of it, we knew a lot. Like we learned a lot, and we learned way more than you could possibly learn by trying to throw any kind of automated solution at this problem. So if you try to come at NurtureBoss and put a hallucination score, toxicity score, coherence score, whatever you want to call it, it would not have given us anywhere close to this insight that we had right now. We identified very specific failures and things that are painful, right? By looking at the data, we immediately could like see that.
Did you use some AI to like summarize the trace data that you labeled? Or?
Very good question. So while you shouldn't use AI to like you should definitely look at the data, put your hands on the data. You can use AI to help you do the analysis of it. So what happens is I exported all of these logs plus the notes into a spreadsheet. Okay. And you don't have to use a spreadsheet. I'm going to use a spreadsheet to drive home the fact that this process can be dead simple and you can get immense value out of it. So what I did is I exported like all the notes. So in this column, column A, you have all the notes that I took. Okay.
Yep.
So like, one note is user was probably asking about lease terms or maybe deposit, not about specials. And the AI was talking about specials. Or another one was the AI offered virtual tours, but there is no virtual tour.
Okay.
So all these different, and there's the disparate messaging one that we just saw. Okay. And so all these different notes that it took. So what you
Okay.
can do is you can take these notes and you can do something really stupid, simple, is you can dump them into like Claude or Chat GPT or whatever. And I say, okay, please analyze the following CSV file. There's a metadata field, which is a nested field called znote that contains open codes. So this is like some terminology here. Open codes is just a fancy word for those comments that I made,
Okay.
just the notes. For analysis of LLM logs that we are conducting, please extract all of the different open codes from the znote field, propose 5 to 6 categories that we can create axial codes from. So the axial code is another piece of terminology. That doesn't mean we just want to group them into we want to group these notes. We want to just classify them.
Okay.
This like open code, axial code thing is actually some really old technique from social sciences. And it's been also used in machine learning for decades. And so that's why we're using this terminology as a shortcut to give to the LLM, because the LLM knows exactly what this means. They're like, oh, I know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to do this technique.
Got it. Okay. So it's better
Yeah.
than just saying like categorize the stuff. It's just some shortcut technique. Yeah.
Yeah. It has like, it gives it some specificity. It like kind of by saying open code, axial code, it knows like what my goal is, because there's a lot of context when I use that terminology in
Okay.
this technique. You could also say categorize though. I mean, you can start wherever you want. So if you want to say categorize, start with categorize. It's totally fine. It's, the point is make progress and get value as fast as you can. I don't want to be too prescriptive, but
Yeah.
the point is like you can sort of, so like, okay, it kind of iterated a lot on how to open the CSV, so we can skip that. But
Okay.
it gave me like, some categories, and I didn't necessarily like all of them, and I could have been, I kind of went back and forth a bit to refine the categories that made sense to me. And I just like I wrote down some categories actually. And here's some categories here. So I said like, okay, tour scheduling, rescheduling issue, human handoff or transfer issue, formatting error with the output. They had some formatting errors,
Yeah.
like putting markdown inside text messages, for example. Um, Conversational flow issues. So that's like the text thing where it's just abrupt, the flow. Making up promises not kept, like rescheduling and things like that, or not rescheduling, but other kinds of promises. And then I usually have another field called none of the above, but I didn't do that here, just out of simplicity.
Okay.
And so what you can do is then you can kind of go back and forth. And what I did is like in the spreadsheet, you can use AI. So there's AI in this Google spreadsheet. The Google Sheets have AI. You can have the AI formula. It's very handy to show you something. So I
Oh,
say,
nice.
okay,
Yeah.
categorize the following note into one of the categories. So you're just like using the LLM to like categorize it. And you can see I'm just categorizing these notes that I took, like the problems that I found. I'm just putting it into categories.
Oh, I didn't know that Google Sheets has this AI feature already. Okay. They're usually
Yeah,
very slow
it's
at this
cool.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
cool. It can be slightly janky, but it's okay. It's lightweight, and you don't have to use any tools, and everyone can understand how to do this. It's like
Okay.
it demystifies the whole process of what I'm doing. Because if I like open some code, you might think, oh, like you need to be like software engineer to do this or
Yeah. Yeah.
something, and like no, you don't. We can use English all the way. So now you have categorized all of these things, and now we can use one of my favorite tools, pivot tables. So pivot tables, um, if you haven't seen them before, it's really handy in a spreadsheet. So you can just count how many times each of these categories occurred.
Okay. Makes
And
sense.
and we can see just at a high level, hey, oh, okay, we're having like this conversational flow issue is happening quite a bit. We also have this like human handoff transfer issue. And you can kind of get a sense like right away what the problem is. Now, it is likely that before you even get to this count, you already know. You've looked at 100 traces, in your gut, you're like, okay, you know what? I need to fix this like human transfer thing like right
Yeah.
now. You're like, I don't even need to like do a data analysis, but it's like quick. This takes like less than a few minutes, honestly. And it just gives you some grounding, and it's like lets you see you go from this like mess of like I don't know what's going on to okay, like I have some idea about the problems that I have,
Okay.
and you have some starting point. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, this is brilliant, dude. But hey, let me ask you this question.
Yeah,
So in this case, the agent was already live in production before you started doing all this stuff, right? Like, but that's not the ideal approach, right? Like, ideally, you want to do some of this before, or maybe dog food with your team first, or like get some users to try it. Like,
absolutely.
how do you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the best case scenario is you dog food it with like, some friendly customers. You dog food it yourself. That's
yeah,
going to be really good. You can also synthetically generate inputs into your system. So
hmm,
basically, what you can do is like think about plausible user questions they may have and try to come up with some hypothesis of where your system will break.
yeah,
But there's a certain way to do that. You don't want to just ask an LLM, hey, come up with plausible questions for a prospective tenant that might be looking to rent an apartment. The right way to do it is to come up with some categories. So it's to come up with some dimensions. And what I mean by that is, let's say, let's think about what good dimensions might be for Nurture Boss. So for
yeah.
Nurture Boss, you might have like resident. You can have
Like type of customer, maybe.
apartment class maybe.
Hmm.
So like luxury, standard, something else. I don't know what that is. I'm not that creative to like think about on the fly. But what was the
Yeah,
thing you suggested?
just type of customer, right? You can get the tenant manager versus the actual resident, right? Depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah, resident, manager,
Yeah,
um, and you can think of put your product hat on. So like by the way, this whole process is very product oriented. Like if you, so when you read the trace, it's not so much about engineering, it's putting your product kind of hat on and saying, is this the experience that you want your user to have? Does this actually make sense? When it comes to like these dimensions I'm talking about, you kind of putting your product hat on and saying, okay, what are the different personas? What are different categories, different dimensions that you may want to consider? And then what you want to do is like, you would take the kind of combination of these, so like luxury resident, luxury for resident, luxury for manager, standard for
okay,
resident, standard for manager. And you would feed those, we call it dimensions, into an LLM, say, okay, these are the different dimensions. For every one of these dimensions, generate plausible user queries.
got it,
And that's
got it.
like way better than just asking an LLM,
Yeah,
just because if you just ask an LLM, it'll be a lot more homogeneous. And you don't want to have homogeneous inputs. You want to explore the space of inputs. And so these brainstorming dimensions helps you to kind of make sure you're exploring the space, being thoughtful about exploring the space. Does that make sense?
got it. Yeah, yeah. You want to find all the edge cases and like,
Yeah.
yeah, got it.
And that's just scratching the surface of this. There's a lot more to generating synthetic data that we could probably get into here, but there's like more advanced ways to generate synthetic data or things to think about in terms
Okay,
of being more adversarial, how to come up with hypotheses to help you break your system, so on and so forth. But the short answer is use your system, and you can use LLMs to help basically pretend as synthetic users.
that makes sense. Okay, let's go back to the categories you have on the left.
Yeah,
So now you have these. I mean, they're basically problems, right? Problems with the product. And now what we're gonna do with this stuff? Is this how we come up with our criteria, or should we just start fixing the issues, or what
very good
we're gonna do
question.
next?
Very
Yeah.
good question. So um, when we first did this, what the top issue was date handling. It's like, and it was very clear. The user wanted to schedule an appointment,
Yeah.
and it was always getting the date wrong. And it was very clear, like, oh, this is so dumb. Like the LM doesn't know what today's date is. We just
Okay.
we just like
Just
forgot.
fix it. Yeah.
They like forgot to put that in the prompt. It's like,
Got it.
oh, do you really need an eval for that? Maybe not. Like, you don't want to eval max. You don't like necessarily want to do evals because like it feels good. The whole purpose of anything is to make your product better and to iterate and move fast. Um, and so for that one, we're like, well, let's see, like let's just give it what today's date is, and that problem basically went away, unsurprisingly. So we
Got it.
didn't really
Yeah.
need an eval from that. Um, Other things that are more subjective are, you know, so it's a cost benefit trade off. So there's two kinds of evals. One is LLM as a judge, which we are going to build together. Another one
Mhm.
is code based eval, where you don't really need an LLM as a judge. It's some kind of assertion that you can make, and
Mhm.
that's very cheap compared to LLM as a judge. And so for the date one, we did the like a code based eval, which is like we had some test cases and we're able to test like does the date that's coming out equal to the expected date, and that was like very cheap. We didn't have to do LM as a judge,
Got it.
but that was like really easy to fix. Now something like, hey, you should be handing off to a human, like, okay, that one, like, we don't know exactly. Like, we did have rules for that already, but the
Yeah.
LM is struggling, and like, we don't really know how we're gonna do it. That seems like a really good use case for an LM judge, and also the eval is going to provide tons of value, even though it's expensive, more expensive, because we're going to iterate against it a lot to make
Got
progress.
it.
And so we said, okay, like let's, you know, okay, we need an LM judge for the human handoff. Let's go ahead and do it. It's an important problem also.
Yeah. Yeah.
The main problem that people encounter when doing LLM as a judge is they just prompt in another LLM to kind of judge what your LLM did. And they say, is it good? Now
Yeah.
that should be
Yeah.
suspicious, right? Like, why is
Yeah.
that okay? Like, why are
Yeah.
you
That's
just
right.
going to tell another LLM to tell me if it's okay? Like, I don't know. And you would be right to be very suspicious of that.
Okay.
And there's an answer to that, and the answer is you can measure the judge. So it's like it's a meta evaluation problem. Is like you need to measure if the judge is good. It's very important. You don't want to skip that step because if you have a bunch of judges, LM judges floating around, and your stakeholders are like you're reporting them on the dashboard, your stakeholders looking at them, and everyone's like, oh, the judge, this no one's going to understand what you're using an LM judge anyways. They're just going to look at your metric. And when there's enough gap between reality and your metrics, no one's going to trust you anymore. You want to avoid that. You want
Yeah.
because like if people don't trust your evals, they won't even trust you. You're done.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You
Yeah,
can't make it have like perfect scores for something, but it's actually totally wrong, right? The way you
yeah, yeah,
measure it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And so, okay, so how do you go about this? Well, thankfully, when you're doing this axial coding stuff, right, you actually have identified really good test cases or some reasonable test cases that you can use that are labeled. You already labeled them as a human, so you have some ground truth.
Mhm.
And these are things that you can use to calibrate an LLM judge to see if you can create a judge that's good enough. Okay, so
And
that's
good
what.
enough is just like good enough is like how closely does it match to human labels, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of what good
How
enough
close
is.
does it match to human label?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do next. Is we are going to think about first. We're going to write the prompt, and this is like the dumbest prompt. I'm not saying like this is a good prompt. This is just
Uh-huh.
a prompt. And the point is not to like have a prompt recipe or some like magic thing. It's just to iterate. Okay. And you
Okay.
want to just specify kind of the requirements of like, in this case, what is a good handoff? Or when should you be doing a handoff and when should it happen? And so, you're scoring a leasing assistant to determine if there was a handoff failure. There should be handoff if any of these things occur. You know, or sorry, there is a handoff failure if any of these things occur, like if a human requested to be handed off, but you just ignored them or looped through it too many times, that's a failure.
Got it. Yeah.
And there's a list of these 7 failures. You don't have to read all of them, but you get the idea. And we also say when there's not a failure, just out of completeness, and we say we want to return exactly true or false, binary. So it's worth lingering on this for a moment. So it's very important for an LLM judge that you output a binary score. 99% of the time, you don't want to export like a Likert scale or a score of 1 to 5. or some kind of score, because that introduces tremendous complexity. And
Yeah.
LMs are not good at continuous scores, number one. Number two is the output is not going to be clear. When you see an average score of 3.2 versus 3.7, no one really knows what the hell that means.
3.7. Yeah, yeah. No one knows.
And it's not really actionable, honestly. They're like, oh, it's like getting better. Honestly, like nobody really knows whether it's getting better or not. I've found that when you try to hide behind a score, you're not really making a decision. And like what you're trying to, the frame here is this feature good enough to ship? Yes or no? Make a decision.
Got it.
What is the line? There is a line somewhere. And so like there has to be, right? And so we don't want to score wherever possible. You want to simplify it. The score just makes it too complex.
Yeah, it's like fake science. It's like false precision, right? Like who knows?
Yeah, it can be.
4.3.
Yeah, it can be. There's some case like there's some evals where you want a score when you go very narrowly into certain aspects of things. Like when you try to have evals for retrieval,
Yeah.
search, and things like that, like different components, then the scores make sense. But for this like LM as a judge case in the overall sense, like no.
And why no explanations though? Like why don't you want to explain
Oh,
why I marked as
so
true or false?
explanation is
Yeah.
actually usually good.
Yeah.
So what we teach is you want explanations and then a score, but this is like a spreadsheet. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
we just want it to be tractable. If I try to give an explanation, then it would like, and the model here in the spreadsheet isn't the most powerful one they give you. So uh, it was going all over the place. So I was just trying to simplify it here. But yeah, explanation can be good. It can help you debug the AI model. And you want to give a structured output. You want like a field. You want it
Okay.
to usually output two fields. Like you want it to output like an explanation and a binary score. And then you can use the explanation to kind of help you debug what went wrong with the LM's thinking.
Oh, so you're actually going to do this LM adjusting using the Google Sheet model, AI
Yes,
model.
I'm gonna stay in the Google Sheet
That's
because
great,
our
man.
goal
Yeah.
is to demystify everything and to make it very clear, like what is actually happening
Okay.
by using a spreadsheet all the way down. So, okay, so we have this LM as judge prompt, and now we can go back to those traces. So we have like this is the original trace column A. It's just in a JSON format, and then we have sort of this LM as a judge. So this is like for one error. So you want them to be scoped usually. So we have this
Okay.
LM as judge just for the handoff error. And we have the formula. Assess this LM trace according to these rules. Okay. And then it's the LM judge prompt that I just showed you. That's all it is. And
Yep.
then it's giving us true or false. Okay. So we have true or false here. And then this column H is the LM judge handoff, the like what it said by the binary score, true or false. Is there an error? And
Uh-huh.
then this is the human label, column G, whether there's an error. Okay,
Got it.
so we have these two labels, and we already did column G before. That was kind of happened for free because of the axial coding in the open coding, the
Oh,
process.
so you have like another AI? No, the human label is like the notes, right? So you have like
Yeah,
an
yeah,
AI
those
to
are
interpret
like the
notes.
results of the notes.
Okay.
You
Okay,
know,
got it.
like basically I said, hey, if the axial code is human handoff or transfer issue, I just said it's true, otherwise it's
Got
false.
it. Got it. Okay.
And so you can then see how aligned the LLM is to the human. That's the main thing that you want to test.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you want to stay away from. So a lot of people go to just calculate agreement. Intuitively, makes sense, right? Like, let me calculate the agreement between the LLM and the human.
And the human.
And it seems
Yeah.
like a plausible metric. It seems like, oh, that sounds reasonable. Okay, like agreement, sure.
Yeah.
But the
Agreement. Yeah.
problem with agreement is most errors, hopefully if your system is not jank, most errors are not happening kind of at the tail. Like, so this human handoff error is not happening every single time. Is maybe happening 15% of the time or 10% of the time, right?
Got it.
And so if something is happening 10% of the time, how can you agree with it? So it's like if a system is saying something is failing 10% of the time, you can agree with it 90% of the time by just saying it never fails. You'll be
Oh,
in
I see.
90% agreement. And 90% agreement seems really good on paper. You go into like a stakeholder meeting, it's like, yeah, I have a judge, 90% agreement. You're like, okay, that sounds good. No, that sounds really bad, actually, potentially. You need to like really dig into that. So as a product manager,
Mm-hmm.
if you ever see the word agreement, you need to pause and be like,
Really?
let me dig into this, please. Like, and so you need to measure two quantities. One is, and there's different ways, there's different terms, but true positive rate and true negative rate. So those are just, and there's different words for it: sensitivity, specificity, precision, recall. There's different words, but
Yeah.
true positive rate, true negative rate. And so true positive rate is what is your ability to successfully identify the failures, like
Uh-huh.
when the failures actually happen, and what's your ability to successfully identify when failures don't happen. And that's a better, those two quantities are kind of better than agreement because they will show you when something is off. Like, and so to make this more concrete, because it can be a lot in your head, like, oh, what am I saying right now? Like, why isn't
Yeah,
that
yeah.
right? And so let's
Yeah.
go here to this confusion. It's called a confusion matrix. It's
Okay.
funny that it's called a confusion matrix. Sometimes it causes confusion, but hopefully today it won't cause confusion. What you have here is like, okay, in this column, you have the human label, okay, true or false, false and true. And then in this going across here, you have the LLM judge label, where the green diagonal is where they both
They're
agree.
aligned. Yeah.
Okay, because this is like 100 traces we have. 70, so when the human says it's false, the LM judge agrees with it, okay, like out of, the 73 times. But then when the human says it's false, the LM judge thinks there is an error 18 times.
Interesting.
There is a different there's different kinds of errors, and this is what I'm talking about here. You don't want to just go out in agreement. You want to know what the true positive rate, true negative rate is. Now, how do you know what a good true positive, true negative rate is? There is no magic bullet there. That's a business decision. Like, what level of judge are you is like okay for you? In
Yep.
in the most base case, you just need to do a sanity check. Like, does it make sense? Okay, like, does it seem okay? Calculate the true positive rate, calculate the true negative rate. Is one of them like really bad? Okay, then maybe you don't want to use that. Is it really
Okay.
low? Or just look at the confusion matrix, do whatever and you can use a spreadsheet and say, is this okay? Like, am I okay with this kind of error? To give yourself an intuition. Oftentimes, you, I would say for most people who haven't are not used to true positive rate, true negative rate, it takes some time for it to click.
Yeah.
Even I have to think about it sometimes, honestly. Even I've been doing this for years just to like ground myself.
I mean, I think the confusion matrix is actually way more clear than the percentages. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it can be.
basically just
Yeah, yeah.
basically it's
I think
basically
it is.
18. There's
Yeah,
basically 18 where it's marked as true when it's false,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So there's a problem when it's false. You have like, where it's false is where there's,
Yeah.
out of these 91 times, you have like 18 of these 91 times, it has this specific error. Is that okay? You
So
can,
basically, 18 times they actually did successfully hand off to the human support, but like the LM thinks it did not, or like there's too many turns or something.
yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
like 18 times LM thinks there is an error when there's not. Right?
Okay.
Is that okay? And so like, different situations you might be like the false positives are not as expensive as the false negatives, so
Yeah.
like you might be okay with catching things, like catching more errors that don't actually exist. You just want to make sure you do catch all of them.
So then what do you do with this 18? Like, do you look back at the traces, see what happened, and then you try to modify the prompt?
Yeah, yeah. So what you do
Yeah.
is you can look at these like 18, and you can say, okay, like what happened here, and you can iterate, and you keep iterating a bit on the prompt.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's quite straightforward. Sometimes not as much, but one thing I did leave out here is a lot of times in the LMS judge, you want examples. I didn't put examples here because I just
Yeah.
wanted to keep it simple. Once you start putting examples in the prompt, you do have to split the data set a bit. And you can start overfitting to your data.
I
So
see.
like if I put all of these traces in my prompt,
Uh-huh.
it would get 100% because it would know the answer exactly, right? So
Yeah.
like you don't want to do that, and so you want to hold aside some data to make sure you're not cheating yourself, and
Okay.
so that's so we don't have to get into all that. From a product manager perspective, the best thing you can do is like just know, just have a trigger in your mind about agreement, and just ask some clarifying questions like, okay, agreement is 90%. What is the baseline error rate? If they say 10%,
Yeah.
you know that agreement 90%, you're like, this is really bad. Like something went wrong here.
And this is like pretty common, right? For teams running evals, they just have like an agreement score. They don't have the TPR,
Very
TNR
common.
thing.
Very extremely common. Is like
Okay.
yeah, this is a reason I'm making a big deal out of it, is
Okay.
because we just see it so much that it's worth calling out.
Okay. Got it. All right. So now we have some judges live, and like what's the next step? You want to put his judges
Yeah.
into production to run all the
So
time, or
now you have
yeah,
this really. So let's say you have the judge, like this human handoff scored judge,
that's right.
and you like it enough. So now you have this like powerful tool that you can use. Like number one, you can set aside some data. You can put it in CI. You can have a test anytime you
Mhm.
make a change to code or whatever. You can test what the how good you're doing on this human handoff problem. But also, you can run your judge in production. You can run it on a sample or a large portion of your production traces, and you can
Yeah.
see like where this handoff failure is happening, and you can debug it even more. You can say, I want to find all of the places where handoff failure is happening. I want to find a lot more situations where it's happening. And you can do production monitoring of it, of problems. You can use these judges to kind of run on a sample of traffic. You can know like, hey, are handoff problems happening? Yeah, so on and so forth. And you can build this suite of evals over time.
Okay.
Most of the time, people ask me how many evals I have. Usually have under a dozen. I don't really have that many because I'm pretty parsimonious about the evals that I need. It
Yeah.
depends. Like sometimes I have more than that. If it depends how expensive they are. It takes some work to maintain this stuff as well. For the LLM judge, the code based ones, not so much, uh, because you don't have to do all this like you know because I don't have to do too many like human label stuff, because like in the code based stuff there is a right and answer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's called a reference based eval, and this is a reference free eval. So depending on what kind of eval it is, it'll there's like a total budget sort of roughly in my mind of like, okay, how many you should have.
So let's say you have like 5 or 6 judge evals in production, and you just like, so basically in production just means that like this human handoff judge, like it just randomly samples, like out of 100 conversations it looks like 5 or something, and then it kind of gives a pass fail.
Yeah,
That
it
kind of
depends
works.
how many you have. Like
Yeah.
it depends how what kind of scale you're at. If you're serving like billions of users a day or something, then you probably don't want to run an LM judge across like everything. Um, it really depends. Like you can get a lot of data from just
Okay.
sampling.
Okay.
But if you have like very low amount of data, like you're only serving like thousands of users a day, then just run the whole, I don't know, just like score the
Just
whole
run
thing.
it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably not that expensive. So it really depends.
And then you have a dashboard that has basically like TPR and TNR for each judge, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what you
Got it.
can do is actually like you can bake this into a score. There are ways to like combine these TPR, TNR. There's like F1 score and stuff like that weight them equally or whatever. You can get into this. Usually do a report one score. That's probably beyond the scope of, I have to go
Okay.
into a lot of like data science to like talk about how to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but usually there's one score, that report. And actually there's like all these evaluators, and I try to have like one aggregate score, um,
Yep.
that is like aggregate across all of them, just to give me a sense, and then I can drill in and see, okay, what's going on.
And when do you do like human labels? Like, because you did it in the beginning with looking at 100 traces, but like when do you do human labels again?
Oh, so always do them all the time. Do
Okay.
it like revisit it. It depends on the dynamics of the system. So it depends. Like anytime there's like big changes, I'll definitely do it again.
Yeah.
and I'll also do it on a regular cadence. Let's say like once a week, once a month. It depends like how fast the systems are changing and what the scale of the system is. But I'll do
Okay.
it like on both a cadence and also, and then you get better every time. But also you can build tools that help you do this. So one of the things that we talk about in our course is, okay, we use like brain trust. We did this here. We did this a spreadsheet or whatever. Um, for Nurture Boss, what they ended up doing, and I took some screenshots and I put it in my blog. So let me just
Yeah.
share that with you. Um, so they actually built their own annotation tool because it's so valuable of a process. Probably the most
Yeah.
valuable process of evals is this, like,
Is annotation.
is the
Yeah.
annotation and counting. Even if that's all you do, you don't build any judge, you don't do any eval, like you don't do whatever, you can get insane value by just doing that. And that's the one part that everyone skips. They try to like go directly to eat like whatever,
The fancy
like
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and so
Yeah.
this is a screenshot of what they like the tool they built from themselves, and they built this in less than 4 hours. Because this is the type of thing that AI is really good at
Yeah.
helping you build. So it's like, okay, you can see this is a trace viewer. You have these selectors for different channels. You have this is their interface. The system prompt is hidden by default. They could just add notes here, and then they baked it into their tool where they just did the axial coding for them. You see, like it just tried to do it for them, and it gave them a count,
Got
and
it.
they loved it. There's a video in this blog post here. This is Jacob, and he's like super
Yeah.
happy. Uh,
Yeah. He looks happy now. Yeah.
he talks about how like he did this and how like the impact that it had on his on Nurture Boss. So
Okay.
um yeah, like you can get really fast. So like with these like your own tools, it gets ridiculously fast and it's not painful at all. Um,
Yeah.
when you
Basically,
yeah.
I mean, but basically, you should still like basically manually, like before I make a major update to your prompt or something, like I should still manually look at the, like the traces and like just make sure like everything makes sense, right? Before I ship anything.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do
Yeah.
it on every single prompt update. You don't have to
Yeah.
look at you don't have to manually look at traces. You can run your evals that you have and do that way. Just make sure you're looking at your traces every so often.
Yeah. Because it's
And
like,
it might be mysterious, like how often and how many traces. So we tell people look at 100 traces minimum.
yeah.
And the reason we say that is not a magic number. We always find that if we don't give a number, people don't start. And then when we give a number, when people get into like let's say 20 or 30 traces, they keep going until they. So we tell people like the term is called theoretical saturation, and that just means you keep doing the activity until
It's like a diminishing returns. Yeah.
until you aren't learning anything new.
Got it.
So we find that people, once they start this, they kind of get addicted to it and they find this so valuable that they just do it. So just keep in mind like 100 traces as a goal.
Okay, this is actually a great conversation. Maybe I have to take down the video of Aman because this is actually a great conversation. Because so first of all, so TRDR is that the trace, looking at the actual conversations of whatever AI product you have, is the most valuable thing, and kind of like counting and labeling that, right?
Yes.
And like, okay, so let's just wrap up by dispelling some myths. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna put a statement out there, and maybe you can tell me why it's right or wrong. Okay, so one thing that I thought was right was like, you want to do an eval for a new product, and then you get your team together, and then you're like, oh, like should we do helpfulness, or should we do toxicity, or should we do like, what should we do, like, and what is the right criteria, like what is good toxicity and bad toxicity? But that doesn't seem to be right based on what we just talked about.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of people go straight to helpfulness toxicity score.
Yeah.
It's a very appealing idea. A lot of vendors, they sell that. They're like, hey, don't worry about evals. You just plug and play this tool. We got you. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Just like push this button and then we'll give you a dashboard. Don't worry. The fundamental problem is generic prompts and those generic things usually don't match to the most important problems that are actually occurring in your application. They're
Yeah.
just like super generic and they lead you astray and they actually waste your time because you spend a lot of mental energy looking at those metrics and looking at the dashboards and talking about the dashboards and having meeting about the dashboard. And all of that could have been directed towards real problems that are actually happening. Now, there is a right way to use generic metrics. There's like an advanced Jedi trick that
Okay.
you can do. Once you have learned error analysis, it will make sense. And what you can do is you can take your hallucination score, you can score this generic hallucination score on all your traces, and you can sort the traces by the hallucination score.
Okay.
And you can see, you can do error analysis and see, does the top hallucination score, like, okay, you can start doing like smart sampling with these different generic scores. You can use these like all these generic scores as like sampling mechanism to see like, is there anything interesting there? And what you'll find is sometimes there is interesting stuff. Sometimes it's not quite like hallucination, but something else. And you can kind of see if any of these scores are helpful, but you shouldn't just report the scores. You should never
Yeah.
report the scores as is. Probably shouldn't use the scores, but you can use them as meta tools.
Got it. Okay. But like it's way more important to identify specific problems wrong with your product.
Yes.
Okay. Then another thing is like, and maybe this is more a question, like how much of the stuff that we just walk through should we do before we even launch the product? You know, like should we try to have like a bunch of judges set up and like, you know, do a bunch of synthetic stuff? Like how much, because once you launch, you actually get real signal, right? I mean, yeah. How much of the stuff should we do?
Yeah, I wouldn't get carried away with evals, especially in the beginning. I would definitely look at lots of data, um, and looking at data includes the using it yourself.
Okay.
I mean, if that like it says like if you're building a tool for yourself, like you are n equals one user, so you don't need to like just use it yourself, and you know the error. You're doing error analysis like just by being alive and using your tool. Like if you're actually using it, it's fine. You don't need to do all that stuff. It's like when it kind of gets beyond the scale of your comprehension, when it starts to, there's like lots of users or lots of things going on,
Different use cases. Yeah.
then you might think about, okay, that then you can see like where that data might be helpful.
Or maybe, you know, you can roll out to like 5% of users and, you know, like maybe they get a shitty experience, but then you can start getting real data to improve.
Yeah. Then nothing beats real data.
Got it. And like the liker stuff is it just completely useless, or like are you dogmatic about it? The 1 to 5 stuff, should you stay away from it?
I would say I haven't seen, you have to be extremely disciplined to use it correctly.
Okay.
You have to have very clear rubrics. You have to make sure everyone is calibrated on that rubric. And it usually doesn't go well. And for most companies, it adds tons of complexity. I would say exponential complexity on like
Yeah.
relative to binary scores. And so I just haven't seen it done in most cases correctly. There's some rare exceptions where is okay, but it's usually like, when I press teams to say, hey, like, can we just make this a binary score? Like, is there a point where this is like good enough versus not good enough? We're able to do it.
But dude, then where does this stuff come from? Like, why do teams keep doing this stuff?
Yeah, because it's a kind of an appealing idea, right? To like, we've all been graded on like, we have a grading system from school, A through F. Like, it's not, nothing is black or white. Like, we want to like have this like high fidelity sort of assessment. But the problem is like, what do you even do with this high fidelity assessment? Like,
Yeah, it just makes you feel like false precision, right? It's like, you know, I got a 3 versus a 4. Like, what does that even mean? Like,
yeah,
like humans can't even tell the difference between a 3 and a 4.
yeah, yeah. Most people can't, and it just gets lost in the sauce. And already, it's just like it's already complicated enough. You need to really reduce complexity in this whole thing
Okay.
and be
Yeah.
pragmatic about it.
All right, dude. This is a super awesome conversation. So I guess let's go back to the Twitter debate. Do evals matter? It does matter if you do it properly, if you're actually solving real problems.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Do evals matter?
Yeah.
I would say so. Evals don't exist in a silo. If you try to evals max and get carried away with evals, it will probably hurt you. What you want to do is definitely ground yourself in the data analysis, in the
Yeah.
looking at the data part. And like, everyone says, look at your data, but I think it's hard to know what that means. And what we went through today actually shows you what it means, and hopefully demystify what it is to look at data. But it's like a very tightly coupled with evals. And I say that it is evals. Like this data, this looking at data counting, I just say because you can't do evals without it.
Yeah, it's not like the super sexy part of it, but yeah, it's the most important part of it. So,
Yes.
yeah, got it. Makes sense. All right, dude. All right, man. I think you convinced me to take your core course now. So can you talk about your course and when you're gonna teach it, and if you have a discount for folks?
We are teaching a course on evals where we walk you through the end-to-end detailed process on how to do evals correctly. We go into subjects like, okay, how do you evaluate your RAG systems? How do you evaluate retrieval? How do you evaluate agents? How do you deal with all kinds of edge cases that you might encounter? How do you do this effectively? Like, how do you actually read a trace and, save yourself from kind of all the complexities that might happen? How do you get through this effort? And we've taught over 2,000 students, including lots of people from Google, OpenAI, things like that. Um, the big labs are really interested in this because they focused on foundation model benchmarks, but we're talking about application specific evals. Like if you're building an application, what is that? And that eval is very different.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I teach the course with Shreya Shankar. Shreya Shankar has been writing about evals as well for years now and has been doing a lot of research in the space. So we both have a machine learning and data science background as well as software engineering background. And the course is 4 weeks long. We give students lots of resources. So we have over 9 hours of office hours.
Yeah.
We give students a AI evals assistant. So it's like everything that we've ever said about evals publicly in the course, blog posts, talks, papers, you name it. We've put that in an AI and we give that to you as an assistant as well. So, it's a modern course.
And you gotta have evals on top of that too, you know. That's kidding.
Yeah, and we're doing evals. Yeah, we are doing evals on top of that. This is the first time.
Yeah.
This is the first cohort we're doing it for. So this next one coming up in October. And so we also give people a 160-page book on evals that you can take with them. So there's a lot of resources there. It's a good community, and we're offering Peter's community 35% off.
Awesome, dude.
So please see the link in the description.
Awesome. Yeah, dude. I personally learned a lot from this. I need to reevaluate how I do evals. So, so yeah, I hope to see folks there. I definitely want to take the course in October. Thanks so much, Hamel, and sharing your knowledge, and keep dropping knowledge bombs, man, like on social media.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.